How's it going, ladies and Bruces? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to the Divine Deception. We still can't do the 3 that we were doing before because we haven't got any new keys, so we're going back into the Cock Robin Killer one, where we're the killer. Act 3. Let's jump in, shall we? The failure. Oh no. I spent a lot of time sitting around, watching, waiting. Came with the job, I guess, but actually thinking about it, I also did a lot when not on the job. I mean, right now I was definitely doing it for my job, but you know, even off the job I tend to just sit down and look out into the world aimlessly. I needed a better hobby. People watching had to be the bottom of the barrel, even if it was useful. I turned off the music I was listening to in my headphones. Ever since my conversation with Secretary Garni, I couldn't really listen to Delay anymore. Couldn't put my finger on why. I mean, it's not like anything changed about me. I should still like it. But now I feel, I don't know, self-conscious about listening to it. I don't know why I cared. I certainly didn't care about Secretary Garni's opinion. But nonetheless, I felt self-conscious. So I turned it off. Silence would seem to be just fine. Without the music, my mind wandered to thoughts on my job to fill the void. I thought back to my conversation with Miss Aisha. A part of me felt guilty for questioning her like that. But a part of me, a traitorous part of me, was still annoyed at her. I believed her when she said that she didn't kill that man. Thinking about it, she was probably right in that she was too busy to have the time to go out and do it. And more to the point, she trusted me with so many of these kills. There's no reason why she wouldn't have me deal with it. The only explanation would be if she didn't plan on killing him. But in that case, where'd she get the bell? She had nothing to do with that kill. No, what annoyed me was that she wasn't looking into things further. I'd always been told that only 3 people knew the truth about the Cock Robin killings. And if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure the third party wasn't anywhere near the crime scene at the time of the kill. If somebody knew our secret, that could be a huge cause for alarm. And Aisha was just pretending like nothing happened. The only way I could square that away in my mind with Aisha's personality was if she knew who the real killer was. Had Aisha lied to me about who knew about the Cock Robin murders? Why? Did she not trust me enough? Had I ever been disloyal? I wouldn't think Aisha had a 4th member. I wouldn't know what for. Everything required for the murders was already handled, and I didn't know of anybody close enough to her that she'd let them in for the sake of things. But if the Bell Killer was truly a mystery to Aisha, she'd be furiously searching for the true culprit, paranoid that the operation had been leaked somehow. The fact that she wasn't told me all I needed to know. Well then, that's fine. It just told me I needed do more to win her trust. If she couldn't trust me with that information, it means I haven't earned it. Everything in life must be earned. Anyway, on the topic of complaining about Miss Aisha, she really could have done to get me more information on Locke. Her file was laughably sparse. A lesser assassin would be able to do anything with such little information. They demand more info. That's why I was top rate. I wasn't fussy like that. If there's not enough to go on, I do my part. I spent some time digging as much as I could find on Locke. Unfortunately, that was trickier than expected. Maybe I've been too harsh on Miss Aisha. After all, it's not like I was able to do much better. Locke was a mysterious character. He played things close to the chest. He hadn't been in town for long, but I was a little unclear of the timeline. I wasn't able to locate where he lived. I didn't know what his official job was. I didn't even know his last name. That wasn't unintentional. I was good at my job. If I was struggling to find information, that meant it was being hidden. Was Locke preemptively hiding from an assassin? That was, frankly, a ludicrous explanation. Who then was he hiding from? Considering he seemingly arrived in Panthea not long ago, I doubted it was a force like the Duads. He theoretically wouldn't have done anything to anger them. Combined with all the other information I had, my best guess was that his trip to Panthea was something of an escape hatch. He probably conned the wrong people in some other city and fled over here to try and lie low until the heat died down. Whether he was being chased by the cops or some outside crime organization was unknown and irrelevant. The point was, his pursuers had failed to do their job, so now I had to do mine. Locke clearly had gotten comfortable in this new city. He'd settled in and moved his eyes to a new target to scam. Only problem was, somehow, that was going to interfere with Miss Aisha's plans. Goes to show, you can only live a life of crime for so long before you step on bigger fish's toes. As limited as my recon ended up being, I was able to get the info that I needed. Nahoy's Nest was definitely not my scene, but it was good for getting information. People talk when they were drunk. I heard a lot of stories about Locke. I had a decent read on who the guy was. Any doubts I had about this target were dispelled. The only information I really needed to know, with an assignment this broad, was where I could find him. This didn't need to be a Cock Robin killing, since Locke probably had a lot of enemies, and lived a less than scrupulous life. It'd be an open-ended investigation the cops would be content to let fall to the wayside. The poem was starting to run low, so I should save my verses. There probably needed to be at least one more decoy, or else people would grow suspicious, so the number of actual kills it could be used for was drastically reduced. Locke would have to do with an unceremonious end. Fitting, I thought, though that sort of thinking was a bit too emotionally driven for this line of work. Right now, Locke was rattling around in his coffin. I had no idea what he was doing. Frankly, I didn't care. All I knew that he was doing his regular routine of a nightly visit at Nahoi's nest. Hopefully he enjoyed himself, because the moment he popped out of that hidey hole, it'd be curtains for him. I've been staking out Nahoi's nest for several nights now. One way or another, I must have kept missing him. Maybe he was coming less frequently, or maybe my timing was off. Whatever the case may be, tonight I hit the jackpot. I had a clear shot of Locke entering the venue earlier. It was from a distance, but with this get-up, there was no mistaking him. I could have done it right then. Unfortunately, right as he was entering the front restaurant, an older couple who seemingly were attending the actual restaurant legitimately for a meal happened to be on their way out of the venue. Further down the street, a large group of drunken college students were on a bar crawl. There was also a businessman making their way back to their apartment close by. All in all, it was still too early in the night. There were plenty of witnesses. They'd probably still have worked out if I'd made my move then, but there's no need to rush things like that. Nahoi's nest had one entrance and one exit. It's not like Locke was going to stay the night or anything. Eventually he'd leave the casino, probably after a successful night of swindling drunks out of their money. Given his schedule, it'd likely be right in the dead of night. Nobody around then, and I'd just finish him off then. For now I was just leaning back and waiting for the time to strike. My current arrangement wasn't one that one would call comfortable. I always prioritised function over comfort. It was a very functional spot. Currently I was lounging on a fire escape on the apartment building directly across the street from Nahoi's nest. The section of the fire escape I lounged on was right next to an abandoned apartment. Finding abandoned apartments isn't as hard as people make it out to be. You just need to be patient and discreet. From my current position I had a nice aerial advantage over my shooting range. It would be hard to directly spot me from this position, and I had many exit paths. With that said, I was still a little more exposed than I was comfortable with, but sometimes a hit required putting yourself out there a little bit. As for equipment, I planned on the sniper rifle doing most of the heavy lifting. It was properly silenced, properly calibrated, and I was properly trained. If I saw Locke, it would take seconds to pull out this thing and put a bullet in his head. And just as a backup, I also had a silenced pistol in my holster. The sniper rifle was a little unwieldy, so it's always good to have backups. For an assassin, the setup was pretty solid. For a person, it was far from ideal. The metal was not comfortable, and the wind up here was starting to make me a little bit chilly. I was better at ignoring it when I had the music on. Now that I was in my thoughts, however, they started to wander to how physically uncomfortable I'd become. The answer? Time to turn back on some music. I shouldn't let my self-consciousness drive me away from listening to Tille's music. That was dumb. Well, hey, why not try and listen to a new artist? There's a lot of music out there. However, right as I reached for my phone, my heart dropped. I began to receive a call. That in itself wasn't that bad. What was worrying about the call was that it was coming from an unknown number. Someone not on my phone's contact list. It shouldn't be possible. I use this phone for work. I was extremely cautious with who got this number. Everybody who knew it was in my contact list. So for somebody not on the contact list to be calling, must be a scam, a scammer. I hesitated. Should I even pick it up? I mean, I was in the middle of a job. I shouldn't be distracted. More to the point, if I answered the phone with my voice, that might give, well, something away. I had a policy to never enter battle I didn't know I could win. It might be overdramatic to call a single phone call a battle, but I regarded any call made on this phone as such. If they really needed to get in touch with me, they'd leave a voicemail or send a text like a normal person. From that I could judge the situation better. Unless... what if the call had come from somebody who had this contact number? I mean, if they were calling this phone, that tracks, right? And if they were calling from an unusual phone, well, that implies that the situation might be grave or dire. What if Miss Aja was currently under attack or something? Answering the phone might be vitally important. Quickly, I weighed the risks of picking up the phone against the risks of just ignoring the calls and waiting for voicemail. I decided the bigger risk was not answering the call. Hesitantly, I put the phone up to my ear, and I clicked the answer button. I waited. I sure as hell wasn't going to make the first word. Who was I dealing with? I can hear you breathing, Devon. Odin? The moment I heard that familiar voice, I instantly began to clench up. What? Weren't you taught to answer first when receiving a call? For shame. Odin? And there's that familiar voice. Why are you calling? Oh, do I need an excuse to talk to my son? Who says I have a particular reason? So you still consider me your son? But of course. Did I not make that clear? We left on kind of an ambiguous grounds. Well, I guess I got that wrong. He's not dead. He's Odin fucking Deismer. He's still alive. We kind of left on ambiguous grounds. Precisely. If I were to fully sever our bond, trust that you'd be fully aware. Oh. Then if I'm your son, it's been a pretty long time since you talked to me. Untrue. Simply untrue. Or did you forget our conversation at the gala? My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't at the gala. Oh, sure you were. I mean, you were in that dreary get-up. But I can recognize your telltale plotting in any context. And part of me wasn't even surprised. Odin was many things, but anything less than supremely insightful was not one of them. Still, back then to notice me. I gulped. You know, normally I wouldn't have had a Deismer acting as a lowly waiter. Fortunately, you were wearing that mask, so I gave it a pass for the night. Besides, it seemed as though you were putting yourself to good use. Even still, you never spoke to me. You didn't notice. You're always slow on the uptick. I noticed you eavesdropping, so I made sure to speak to both you and Art. Oh. You know, between the two of you, I had so hoped that at least one of you would have seen through my words. But then again, I always did push you to unreasonable heights. I didn't know what to say. Instead, my mind tried to go back to what Odin was talking with Art about on that night. I couldn't really recall accurately enough. Something about why Odin didn't just retire? Beyond that, it was a blur. Then again, if Art couldn't solve one of Odin's riddles, I surely had no chance. At any rate, you were right on the market. At least one mark. Which is that we haven't had a proper conversation in quite some time. So then let's talk, Devon. How are you enjoying your new job? It's good. It's fulfilling being good at something. Splendid. You did have quite a talent for murder, didn't you? Won that silly award. If only I'd learned of it sooner, perhaps we could have cultivated that talent instead of wasting so much time. I know a friend who'd be perfect for that sort of training. I was speechless. Speaking with Odin was an extremely exhausting experience, but rare did he throw out so many high-velocity punches this quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Playing coy? What did I say about keeping secrets? You could try, but I'd never be as good at hiding things as you'd be at seeing through things. So you do remember at least some of my lessons. That's nice to know. As you said, trying to hide from me is a waste of breath, Devon. That cock robin thing? It's really silly. Still, you got a job working for the governor, so I can't be so derisive. Honestly, it's rather impressive. How do you know about all that? You just admitted it to me, you dolt. Damn it. This is why saying anything to Odin was a mistake. No matter what you said, he'd always find a way to twist it around and use it against you. Stupid Devon. Before now, it was mostly a suspicion of mine. Of course, my suspicions are often correct. The mark of a ruler is killer intuition. That is the killer intuition that kept you alive in the army, I'd bet. But it occasionally misfires, so it's always nice to get confirmation. But before that, your hunch. How'd you get to that? Though more importantly than that, how'd you get this number? Those are better questions. Let's see. Well, as I said, I saw you at the gala. Later that night, dear Athen was the victim of a rather awful murder. It didn't take much to put the pieces together. In truth, since we'd last spoke, I'd essentially given up on you. For years you tried my patience. It appeared you had well and truly given up ever becoming worthy of the royal blood that flows in your veins. Had you died in a ditch a month later, I wouldn't have attended your funeral. But seeing you in action had me curious. I always knew you had potential, and I'm rarely wrong about those sorts of hunches. I have a very special birdie who is unbelievably talented at gathering information. I tasked my birdie to gather as much information as they could get on you. And after some time, they gave me their report along with this number. So I thought it worth giving you a call. A birdie? A birdie had found this out? How would I... What did I... Let me guess. Weak as ever. You're now panicking about how you didn't do a good enough job covering up your tracks. Dispel those fears. It took a considerable amount of effort for my birdie to get what they had on you, and little of it was substantive. But it was impossible for my birdie to not uncover your secrets eventually. They can get their hands on pretty much any information in Panthea. The things most mere reporters and police officers can't reach. It's one of the secrets of my immortality, you see. I didn't know what to make of all this. It was all too much. I was struggling to keep a grip on the conversation at all. I felt as though at any moment the whole thing would slip completely out of my control. That's what talking to Odin felt like. He never really had any power. Not in where the conversation was going. The best you could do was try and hold on to as much as you could and write it out. If you were lucky, he'd stop talking before too long. What do you want? I wanted to talk with my son. To tell them they'd been doing an excellent job. What? Huh? I must admit, if you told me a decade or so ago that one of my sons would grow up to be an assassin, I would have scoffed at the idea. It isn't exactly a task fitting for a ruler. But over the years, I've grown an appreciation for violence. In a sense, the ability to take lives at will is the greatest measure of power there is. And unlike a typical thug, an assassin's methods are elegant and well measured. They rely on information, skill, and an iron will, all important traits. Additionally, from what I can tell, you're using your skills to support Governor Ija. To be honest, I can't say I fully approve of having Panthea led by such a woman. My assessments would rank her as utterly unworthy. However, it appears that her reign is for the best. At the very least, Art seems to want her in charge for a bit longer. Probably for some small-minded reason like tax exemptions or whatever, knowing his priorities. And my biases aside, simply put, supporting the current governmental monarch is an achievement of itself. It is a position of great power, better than I would have ever dreamed for you. You've done well to get there, Devon. Thank you. Keep things up, and who knows? Huh? Like I said, I never officially disinherited you. Polly has been a thorough embarrassment. One even greater than you, if that's possible. And Art, well, he certainly inherited my ambitions and much of my talent. However, I have been having growing doubts about his place. To rule requires a fire within, yet he seems increasingly hollow. As of now, he is still superior, but if he keeps up his downward trajectory and you keep up your upwards one, well, the future has many twists and turns. I would never have imagined the situation, and yet here we are. Life has so many amusements. At the very least, maintaining your position could be advantageous to the Deisma family down the line. So keep up the good work. I'd love to talk more, but I've got to bail the dumber of your brothers out. By the looks of it, I would guess he's being played as we speak. Advantageous to the Deisma family? Did he seriously think I was still loyal to them? Was I? It seemed as though Odin was about to hang up, but in an entirely unexpected turn of events, I wanted to keep talking. Wait. Oh? You have more to say? Did you kill Maximilian Collins? The phone was dead quiet. Then faintly I heard it. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. So you didn't kill that one, is that right? Now this is quite fascinating to me. Answer the question. Maximilian Collins is related to Veronica Collins. It is rare that a woman can capture my respect. Veronica is one of two such women, the other being your late mother. For all the entertainment she has given me, I would much rather not lay waste to her relatives. That seems like an acceptable baseline of respect. You're saying you wouldn't, though. Or wait, what about your birdie? Is it possible they killed them? Devon. For as far as you've come, you've never learned how to properly use the thing in your head that barely qualifies as a brain. Think for a moment. In what I've told you tonight, is there any way that you can ascertain that answer through your own efforts? God damn it, Odin, answer something straight for me. My mind replayed everything that Odin had told me. Not relevant. Relevant. You only looked into me after the night at the gala. And when you contacted that's when you contacted your birdie. Maximilian was killed in line with the Cock Robin murders. But he was killed at the very least around the time when the first murder happened. Neither you nor the birdie would have known about my involvement at that point. And you wouldn't know that the Sam murder would be happening. Good. But then again, if I had figured you out and subsequently murdered Maximilian, I couldn't have lied about when I started looking into him. I could have. Did you? Well, you tell me. And just like that, Odin hung up on me. I felt like throwing up. My vision was literally blurring. I don't know what was happening, but the moment I got off the phone with Odin, a wave of emotions hit me. Maybe I was bottling them up during the conversation in an attempt to get through it. I couldn't say. All I could say that I was feeling seriously unwell, which was pretty bad considering I was in the middle of a job. Why was I freaking out like this? It wasn't rational. I just talked some. He even congratulated me. And I felt good about it. But Odin, just hearing his voice, I could feel so many things coming back to me. I was beginning to spiral. I gripped onto the metal handrail in an attempt to stay in the moment. Focus. I was in the real world. Stay lucid. Growing up in the Deisma family was incredibly weird. From the outside, it might have seemed like a blessed childhood. We lived in a fancy mansion, we went on nice vacations. In theory, I could get anything I liked. I could eat anything I wanted. We had so much money it was ludicrous. But living there was like making a deal with the devil. Shiny on the surface, horrible on the inside. I don't remember, Mum. Art was the only one old enough to have any real memories of her. There were servants, but they were specifically instructed to do their jobs and nothing else. Really, we were just raised by Odin. Odin is a very weird person. One could generously call him eccentric. I would call him an arsehole. Only now, with my years of life, could I see through that. He wanted to impose his view of the world on us. He had a very interesting view of the world. If you wanted anything, you must earn it. Your only value in life is what use you provided. Everything was, in reality, a competition. The winner was right. Never give up power. We were always taught and tested with these lessons. Whenever we asked for something, Odin would be quick to caveat it with a challenge or a price. Whenever we failed, there would be serious consequences. What was life without stakes? Our property would be destroyed. We'd be banished from the house. Physical punishments were rare but not unheard of. I remember my fair share of beatings. We learned to play stupid games from an incredibly young age, and as much as I wanted to hate him, it was hard to. After all, he walked the walk. He would consistently provide us opportunities to prove him wrong, and I was never able to. He constantly told us that our purpose was to continue and grow the Deisma family. Everything we did reflected on the Deisma name, so improper behaviour was discouraged. Failure was unacceptable. Art had always thrived in this environment. He could devote himself to Odin's studies with a single mind. He spent hours training himself to succeed in skill, to pass a test, to solve a type of puzzle Odin threw at him. If he was given a chance to prove himself to Odin, he took it, and he always succeeded. Well, not always, but often enough that he never really saw the true darkness of Odin's parenting style. When I heard Art was becoming Olympos CEO, that didn't surprise me for a moment. I always resented him for raising the bar to an impossible level. For a long time I blamed him far more than Odin. Polly, on the other hand, had his fair share of issues. He was horrid at studying, couldn't stick to anything. He also cared the least about Odin's approval, his challenges, about Odin in general. Those two would get in a number of shouting fights, and Polly would be punished pretty severely at times. But he also wasn't the worst of us, because despite it all, fundamentally, Polly was talented. He might not have seen it himself, but Odin certainly did. When it came to natural intellect, Polly probably even surpassed Art. He might not have behaved as elegantly as Art, but he had a natural charisma about him. People liked Polly. They wanted to be his friend, and perhaps more than anything, Polly was always passionate and driven. While part of Odin hated Polly's insolence for constantly defying him, I suspected that a part of him also respected the gall of it all. But then there was me, middle child, most absolute failure. I tried, I really did, to succeed, to be the son that Odin wanted, but I just couldn't do it. My best wasn't enough, I was just lesser. I wasn't smart, I wasn't clever, I wasn't disciplined, I wasn't elegant. No part of me showed the potential to be a leader. I could never apply myself like Art, show his level of grace. I never had a natural talent like Polly. Couldn't make people like me like he could. I kept trying to live up to Odin's expectations, and Odin kept trying to make me better by putting me through his lessons. I got the worst of it. Some of the things he put me through to try and demotivate me, it wasn't really that bad, on an objective level. I was probably just being a baby about it at the time. Regardless, at a certain point, my ineptitude became clear. I would never be the heir Odin wanted. I was forgotten, left to the wayside, written out of the will. Odin began to erase my presence. I was the embarrassment. Nowadays, most people don't even know that Odin has 3 sons. And eventually, I'd like that just fine. I was meant to be the unknown man. But when I went to war, when I was spiraling, the thought that if I died, I'd finally be completely blacked out, it was a scary thought. It might have kept me alive. Suddenly, I snapped out of my funk into attention. I saw movement in front of me. It took a moment to actually register what I was seeing. But once I did, oh fucking... With seemingly no prompting, a bunch of people had begun to swarm out of Nahoi's nest. Not like a couple. No, it seemed like an entire casino's worth of people was fleeing at the same time. Men, women, all rushing out in a cramped fashion. None looked particularly scared, more annoyed. Fuck. What on earth was happening? Was it possible that somehow Locke was onto me? That they were somehow using this chaos as cover? I mean, if that's what was happening, it could be a pretty damn effective method. I quickly scanned the whole crowd. Locke, where are you? He had to be in here somewhere. How could you have known an assassin was in waiting for him? Did he know? Or was this some sort of coincidence? I couldn't tell. If it was deliberate, then it was unlikely he solely hoped to escape just utilizing general confusion. It was possible that he was implementing some sort of disguise. I still hadn't been able to get a very clear picture of his face, and I'd mostly be going off... I'd mostly be going off of outfit to identify him. If he took that out of the picture... No, I didn't see him carrying anything like a disguise when he entered. I don't think he could just happen to find a disguise in an underground casino. Was fighting him even worth it at this point? There were so many witnesses at this point. I might even hit someone in the crossfire. Now, thinking about it a little bit more, I had to take the shot now. If you consider the possibility that this panic wasn't a deliberate ploy, that means Nahoi's nest had run into some trouble. They might be closed. They might be closed for some time. Leads on Locke were scant. If he stopped coming to his usual haunt, that'd make doing my job in a timely fashion really hard. And alternatively, if he had intentionally caused this panic to try and escape, then he probably knew someone was after him. And again, doing my job would become very hard. The witnesses would make it hard. But it was super dark out and there were no lights near my location. I had a silencer, and honestly, that chaos probably worked to my advantage. I'd fire and flee. It'd probably work out. If only I could find him. Where on earth was he? Without really thinking, I backed up a bit, just trying to get a wider perspective on the scene at large. And just in the side of my vision, I saw it. From this angle, it was almost impossible to see, but I saw it. In the side alley next to Nahoi's nest, I saw a familiar-looking suit, carrying a metal suitcase. Locke. What the fuck? How had he gotten over there? I swear he hadn't come through that entrance. And I forget that. Immediately, I pulled out the sniper rifle. I aimed right at him. Shit. At the last possible moment, he walked out of my line of sight. It was too far down the alley for me to shoot him at this point. Damn, if only I'd taken a step back sooner. I couldn't start despairing now. Admittedly, admitting defeat before actually being defeated was a fool's most common mistake. I knew where he was. I wasn't going to let him get away just like that. I put the sniper rifle back, around my back, and got to work. I climbed over the fire escape railing. Then I jumped down. After falling a little bit, I landed on a lower section of the fire escape. I repeated this process 3 times before finally falling down to the street. Unfortunately for me, I couldn't take the most direct path. There was a ton of witnesses spread all out, and they were all concentrated too close in the back alley to cut through like that. Even though it was pretty dark, I didn't want to risk anybody getting a look at my face. It's fine. I ran further to the right. I kept my movement as a brisk jog as I could manage. The mistake would be breaking out to a pure sprint. When I last saw Locke, he was casually walking. That meant I could afford to waste a bit of time. It's more important to keep my energy. After making my way about 2 blocks from the initial incident, I turned left and made my way across the street. Even the furthest stragglers hadn't made it this far from Nahoi's nest. Given that everybody was fleeing from the scene, somebody in a hoodie, jogging, should be the least of their concerns. There was an alley that cut across this block pretty close by. I ran over to it, then I made my way through the alley. It didn't take long to emerge on the other side. Now where was Locke? I started scanning and I saw him walking down the sidewalk on the other side of the street. It'd be too cumbersome to take out my sniper rifle and take a shot. I was fast with it, but even for me, it would take a little bit of time to properly set it up and make a decent amount of noise. The safer play was just to default to my silenced pistol. I grabbed it from my holster and kept jogging. There's a bit too much distance right now for my liking. I crossed the street until I was on the same sidewalk as him, and I got a bit closer. Okay, from this distance it'd be a sure thing. 2 bullets in the back would probably do it. I readied the gun and said a solemn prayer. Goodbye, Locke. I don't know how or why you almost slipped from my grasp, but you're dealing with a professional. You never stood a chance. And as if to punish me for this thought, it was at this moment Locke turned back and looked right at me. But chalking up it as a coincidence seemed wrong. From the desperation with which he turned, the anxiousness I caught in his face, it was as though he expected to see me behind him. But how? How do you know I was approaching him from behind? I hadn't made a noise. I'd stayed out of his eye line. Did this guy have a sixth sense? His eyes registered what he was seeing just as I made the decision to fire the shots. Locke was saved by a frankly astounding set of reflexes. In a life-saving second, he bounced off one leg and began to run down the alley to the right, further from Nahoi's nest. Had he been a second slower on the uptake, he would have panicked or tried to call out to me. My bullets most certainly would have hit their mark. But I could now see why this guy was a gambler. Apparently he just had a god's worth of luck on his side. He had escaped my initial volley and was now keenly aware that I was trying to kill him. It's not like I had a choice before, but now I really was dead set. The guy had to die. Fast. Immediately I ran after him. Instead of going down the same alley, however, I kept running forwards. Thinking about this guy's trajectory, it'd be a better move to cut him off. And in his panicked, high-tension state, I highly doubted that he'd be composed enough to notice that I wasn't directly following him. Once I got to the next alley, further down in the direction Locke was already walking, I then turned right. I hoped to already see him from my ankle down the alley. Unfortunately, it was no dice. He must have kept running in the direction of the alley. Typically, this would have been a really dumb choice. Had I followed him down the alley, he wouldn't have had time to get additional cover, and I would have easily been able to shoot him down. He probably was too dumb to think of this, however, and accidentally ended up outmaneuvering me. Whatever, I kept running down the alley. Just then I heard a voice shouting out, "I don't know what you want, man, but it's probably for the money, right? In this case, there's way more money than whatever your employer's paying you. I'm dropping it down into the sewer right here, in this hole. Just go after that and get paid." Huh? What was he getting at? Right as I came out of the alley, I saw what he was talking about. I caught him right as the metal suitcase that he had been carrying up until now fell down into the sewer through an open hole. Locke was now carrying the sewer cover in one of his hands. Trying to bribe me, huh? Sorry, dirtbag, but unlike you, I wasn't motivated by money. Cute plan, though. Locke began to run into the nearby alley, sewer-grade cover still in hand. I readied my pistol, hoping to get him in the back before he got out of my line of fire. But again, right as I prepared to shoot, he spun around 180, holding the sewer cover, and right by his chest with both hands. His turnaround was more explainable though. He probably heard me. As I fired a shot, it ended up hitting him, bouncing off the sewer cover he was holding with both hands. I couldn't tell if this was a calculated defense or a fluke accident saving his life. I'd bet on the latter, especially considering right as the shot bounced off, Locke let out a girl's yelp. Yeah, this dude was flying by the seat of his pants. His instincts caused him to drop the grate as he ran down the alley. Unfortunately, from my angle, I couldn't get a better shot. I wasn't going to let this fucker outrun me. I crossed across the street diagonally and quickly got to the alley he'd run down. Just like a lot of alleys in this side of town, it wasn't particularly well maintained. Graffiti and sewer drains lined the walls. I ran down it and got to the next street. But there I completely stopped in my tracks. What? Where had he gone? I looked from my left to my right, but I couldn't see him anywhere. Based on my speed, he didn't have the time to cross the road and go down another alley. Well, what if he looped back around in one of the alleys to the street that I was just at? That would be clever. However, the reason I went down the alley Locke did was because the closest alley to me had a big chain fence that would be difficult to scale. And there weren't any nearby alleys on the other side. So what the fuck? Hey, where are you? I ran further into the street looking for him. Was I just bad at estimating speed? That couldn't be it, could it? Fuck. Just to try and check, I ran down the street and crossed the alley to another street. I still couldn't find him. No, he couldn't get away like this. Wait, idea. I ran into the street and found the closest sewer grate. With a bit of difficulty, I moved it out of place and went down into the ladder. I pushed the sewer grate back into place and descended fully into the sewer. Great. As silently as I could, I moved toward where the metal case would have been dropped. It took a bit of doing, but eventually I found the spot. Awesome. To double check, I walked over and opened it. Just as Locke said, it looked like there was a ton of money in there. So then this should work. I scoped out the area for a second, then found a brief dead end close by. I leaned up against the wall over there and began to stake things out. If you were to make your way to that suitcase, you'd have to move this way. And it was impossible to see me before I saw you, with how I'd situated myself. Thinking about it, Locke wasn't the sort of guy who could afford to just lose such a big chunk of money. Of course, if it was to save his own skin, I'd have no doubt that he'd give up. But if he had a chance of recovering it, he'd take it. No matter how far he was, he must have heard my shouts wondering where he was. At that point, he probably correctly assessed that I was more interested in killing him than getting the money. In that case, in his mind, the next step was clear. After getting a bit more distance on me, and having properly lost me, he'd go down into the sewers, snake back around, and grab what he'd lost. That's what I'd be counting on. I sat silently, waiting. Soon enough he'd come. He had to. Everything that I knew about Locke told me that he'd come back. He was greedy. He was opportunistic. He wasn't going to give up whatever he'd won that easily. If he saw a chance to recover it, he'd take it. So then why wasn't he coming back? At this point, surely I would have heard something if coming back here was his first priority. Still, this wasn't a loss. This probably meant that, perhaps smartly, he prioritized getting to safety above all else. He was probably incredibly shaken up, hoping to get as far away from me as possible. But even still with that in mind, that doesn't mean he could give up this amount of money. He probably suspected I might have come back to take it. However, in his mind, it had to be worth it to at least come and check to see if the money was gone. Not even going to double check the place you'd left this amount of money was insane. It was unthinkable for Locke. So eventually he'd come back over here. So I'd wait. There. I heard something. I readied myself. Somebody else was moving in the sewers, I could hear it. They were far now, but it was clear where they were moving. Come on, Locke. Get your prize. Huh? The movement stopped. What happened? Was it possible they noticed me here? No, there's no way. I was hidden so that I have to see you before you saw me. More to the point, the noise didn't even get remotely close before stopping. Was Locke just still running from a phantom threat and hoped to use the sewers to throw off the trail? The noise was Locke, right? Of course it was. Who else would be going through the sewers at this time of night? Whatever. Eventually Locke would check the case. He couldn't lose this much money without even checking on it. It was impossible for him. So you keep saying. Hours passed. Hours more. I waited in the dark, smelly sewer, waiting. And waiting. And eventually, I accepted a simple truth. Locke wasn't coming back for this money. I had failed. Kind of a shit assassin, huh? I mean, I get it. Locke's a scheming bastard, whatever. That only gives you so much of an excuse. This is a complete whiff on Devon's part, plain and simple. It's not even a hard job. Killing people's really easy. We're not apex predators, not remotely. We're fleshy, soft, easily poisoned, overgrown babies that are arrogant enough to assume that we'll live a century or so. Don't believe me? Just try it. Grab a knife, walk into the street, and just fucking go apeshit on a passerby. Of course, it's not getting caught that's the tricky part. Stupid governments with their stupid rules. Isn't there an amendment about this? Can you believe Big Brother over here restricted my right to murder people? What is the world coming to? We've gotten off topic. You always say that. You're the one who always drives it off topic. In case you haven't noticed, that's something of a common occurrence with me. Sorry. Anyways, we've got something to get to. The bet. We bet on whether Devon's father was alive, and as we know now, he's very much alive. At least currently. But yeah, Devon's none other than the product of Odin Dysma's ballsack. Isn't life great? Hey, do you like how I pretended that this was a super unimportant bet that you had no way of knowing? But actually it's something that is important, and you did have a way of knowing. Unless you figured it out before now. Did you? Oh, don't answer. You just lie and say you did regardless. Whatever. You were wrong and said that Odin was dead, so you lost all those chips you bet. Yay. Bye. And we didn't get another key either, which means we have to continue with this one. Which we will do in the next episode. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.